he's going to talk today about, among other things, about Pie Ranch, which is in San Mateo County. It has over 100 acres now of production. Basically organic, high quality, and sustainable produce. And you're also working with Google and Stanford Dining, so everyone knows about that, to kind of scale markets and try to make the best food, and that's also environmentally friendly. So please help me welcome Jered.
Thank you. Thank you, Nico. Thank you, Skylar and Jamie, and you all for coming to this class and being interested in social entrepreneurism and kind of taking the drive to make positive change happen in the world a part of your life in some way. So I am honored to be able to share a little bit of my background of how I got into this line of work of ranching pies, and as well as kind of more into the details of what we're doing now and where we want to go with our version of what it means to scale the social enterprise. But first, I have to ask, have any of you been to a Pie Ranch barn dance? A few handfuls, yes. So you've actually stepped into that old 1934 packing shed and experienced what it's like to be on the coast side there. Did you get a chance to spend time walking back into the farm? You have, you've seen it. Great. Well, you're all invited. You just missed the last one, was this last Saturday. But we have them every third Saturday of the month, and they're a great way to get over to some cooler temperatures and have fun dancing in a barn. But dancing in a barn isn't the enterprise that we had in mind. However, it definitely adds to the dimension of what we are wanting to do with our food system, which is to reconnect people to the source of their food and have greater numbers of people having more of a impact through having that direct relationship to where their food's coming from. So, but that desire for me didn't materialize until I was in college at UC Santa Cruz as a 19-year-old. But going back further, what led me to UC Santa Cruz in the first place was the fact that I loved going to beautiful places as a kid growing up in a maybe not so beautiful urban environment, not far from Santa Monica Boulevard in Los Angeles, in an apartment with a single mom and sister, a latchkey kid going to our local elementary school and volunteering in the cafeteria to be able to get my daily lunch at Westwood Elementary. And I loved getting support to go to, I got a scholarship with my mom to go to YMCA camp, and I loved going to the mountains and spending that week with other friends from summer camp and just fully having like the time of my life away from the kind of stresses of daily life in LA. And also my dad would take us up to Yosemite, and we might go up for a long weekend. And I remember having those experiences, away from the streets of LA and sitting along the South Fork of the Merced River thinking, oh my God, this is natural. Like, nobody put these rocks here. Nobody planted these trees. This isn't a landscaped environment that somebody had a hand in, but this is just here. And recognizing that there's a large swath of the planet that is there that hasn't been touched by humans. This was at that time as a young kid going and being able to jump in that river, and my dad saying, just open your mouth, drink from the South Fork of the Merced. Just the water was pure and clean enough to drink. And it wasn't but a few years later, going back with them, that we got word that it was not okay to drink that water anymore. You had to purify it in some way because there was larger quantities of intestinal parasite that you could get, the Giardia, that would not be good to just drink without filtering. So, so speaking of water, I'll drink a little water. I always felt better being in an environment like Yosemite or up at summer camp. It was just a great feeling, and I thought it would be interesting going to school with the topic of psychology, environmental psychology, and trying to understand more, why is it places like that help us feel better. And the more I dug into coursework in psychology, I realized there were a lot more kind of complex, systemic causes for this people's personal disease, but as well as all the other things that you could call kind of a lack of health or something out of balance. And so I was, intrigued to be asking, I'm wanting to ask broader questions about, what is it that can help us as people on the planet feel better about being alive, and what does it take for us to create relationships that foster health. And I, as a 19-year-old, that summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I went and visited a friend who was apprenticing on a farm in Covelo in Round Valley. And it was that week that I spent on that farm that was just like, oh my God, this is like what it was like at summer camp, except, they were caring people, the family was amazing, the work was maybe what was different, that every day they get up super early and milk the cows and engage in the farm work, and they were growing a diversity of vegetable crops, and they had direct relationship to where their food was going. And I thought that feeling I had being on this farm was like that feeling in Yosemite or at camp, but with this added dimension of economic life, of productive life, that what they were doing during the day was connected to, it had a livelihood, and it was connected to people that were nourished by their efforts. And that simple relationship, the economic relationship, stuck with me as like a profound difference in what I was interested in environmental psychology, and what for healthful personal relationships, realizing that this was about not only personal health, but also the health between them as individuals and their community, and them as individuals and the land around them. So the way that they farmed and the way that they took care of the soil and the water, and the way they nurtured those plants to be able to provide nourishment to that community was in concert with principles of stewardship, of health of that ecosystem. They had on site all of their fertility through their animal production that fed the soil, that fed the plants that they harvested for their community. And that closed loop farming system and their closed loop economic system that was fully transparent. So they're members of the farm. It was a community supported agriculture farm. And all the members of that farm knew where their food was coming from, and also had an understanding of the budget, how it worked, what the farmers were paid, what their employees were paid, what the seed costs. So it was a very simple, clear line item budget, income and expenses, making that business something tangible that people can get a hold of. And for me, being this young kid trying to figure out how to be alive in the world in a responsible way, it seemed very clear. It was like all the complex, and probably you're delving into a lot of these topics in your coursework. It's just so complex, and every system within the economic realm, and then business development and production of anything, has a whole complexity of challenges that we face if we want to do it in a way that fosters health between those three sectors: the individual, the community, and our relationship to the earth. So that all led me to spending quite a number of years with organizations that were helping to put that idea out for both the urban community as well as farmers. So I helped organize Western Region CSA conference back in 1995 in San Francisco. 450 folks came. I was 25 at the time. So I was right out of school, and I was just like gung-ho to help take this idea and have it spread. And I had done my senior thesis on the national community-supported agriculture movement and the national study, and wanted to do what I could to help foster more of these kinds of farms that had direct relationships with the people eating from those farms. So fast forward to when was it? 2003. I had met that first photo in the intro slide, Nancy Vale, earlier in '97, but we didn't kind of romantically get involved until an ecological farming conference in 2000 and at Asilomar, and it was at a barn dance, a contra dance actually, and the same caller, for those of you who have been to the barn dances, Andy, who's the caller at our barn dances, was the caller that night down in Monterey, and he it's going to get a little too cheesy, but he at one point, and I wasn't dancing with Nancy, and as barn dances go, and this might entice some of you to come out, you're not necessarily dancing with the same partner all the time, and it's moving around. And so suddenly I was dancing with the person I wanted to be dancing with, and right then Andy said, "Dance like you mean it." And we kind of like looked at each other, and literally the next day we were talking about starting an educational farm, and I was working at the time and starting a family, and I was working at the time at the Center for Eco-Literacy in Berkeley, and she was at the farm at the university at UCSC. And so we'd commute back and forth to visit each other, and up and down the stretch of coast, Highway 1, beautiful stretch. Right here, you can see that the one line, main line down mostly the middle there is Highway 1. This is Año Nuevo Point. And right up in that top corner there is a little pie slice wedge. Can you see it? I don't have a pointer, a clicker, but there's a little wedge. Maybe it'll come in. Now that's a little more obvious. There, the little pie slice up here. It's just 14 acres. So we thought all we would need in order to invite young people out to the farm to experience the similar kinds of experiences that I had as a teenager. So it's high school age is who we focused on. And we wanted to start an educational farm for young people, to train new farmers, and to do this kind of regional work to foster more of these kinds of direct relationships. It's another picture of the pie slice. And that year, after we got onto the land, 3 weeks after we started, Lucas here was conceived, and there he was. That fall, we were able to get the cover crops planted in October of 2004, and then got to work building healthy soil and building infrastructure for animals and putting in crops that could help be the manifestation of that pie slice wedge. So we had to grow crops like strawberries. I don't know how many of you like strawberry rhubarb pie. Anyone here? All right. Pumpkin pie, anyone? Great. So we also had to grow other ingredients for pies like wheat for the crust and eggs for the filling, especially for those pumpkin pies, and have dairy for the butter for the crust, as well as for the filling. And there you have a pumpkin pie. And we started a social enterprise with a pie shop. Our co-founder, Karen Heisler, started a pie shop in San Francisco called Mission Pie, and that was a for-profit, and we started the farm and educational programming as a nonprofit. And the high school youth who were involved in coming to the farm from Mission High School were involved in learning what it takes to create a small bakery and cafe in the Mission District of San Francisco. There's our daughter, Rosa, and some of the students from those first classes that came out in 2005 from Mission High. We also invite folks to come and spend the whole year with us if you're wanting to become a skilled practitioner in this kind of diversified small-scale production. So we offer apprenticeships for emerging farmers. Yeah, so for over the last 10, 11 years now, since we started the educational programs, we've maintained a relationship with 3 in-depth partner schools, about 1,700 students per year that come to the farm. And then we have in the summer paid internships for the high school youth to spend 8 weeks in the summer working with us and learning more of what it takes to run the farm. As well as this year we're dividing into tracks so that if they're interested in culinary, they could end up pursuing a career path in other ways to relate to food and farming. Our apprentices, this year we actually have 7 apprentices with us. So yeah, since 2007 we've had, well, now over 78 graduates. And a lot of them are out. You know, this is one way of scaling our kind of social enterprise, is creating new leaders to be able to do that themselves. And a number of them have their own businesses or are in management roles on other farms. And then I spend a good amount of my time helping to develop regional partnerships. So working with there's a group called the San Mateo Food Systems Alliance, and we engage in a lot of projects and policy development that will help make the conditions a little easier for new farms to get started, people to access land and capital to build their own enterprise, as well as create greater accessibility for the foods that are being grown on these farms to their institutions. And then we also do other kinds of ways of connecting with our community. And if we have time at the end, I can share more about that. But I thought we'd take a moment from just hearing me sharing and listen to some of the other voices of the farm. So I don't know if we need to turn the lights down, but if we want to, we can. Oops.
I think that's something that's really special about Pie Ranch. They've created this mini ecosystem within our larger ecosystem we all exist in. And the conditions are right within that ecosystem for everyone to play their unique part, but to really contribute together in this very meaningful way that's leading towards, transformational change.
I've had this feeling, like a lot of us, that our food system is broken, our education system is broken. I think we're all looking for ways to fix it. And coming down here, I think what I really felt was, this isn't just a possibility, this is what's really happening here. Kids are learning and great food is being produced, and that there's this incredible connection and community down here.
So the mission of Pie Ranch, to reconnect people to their food and a greater number of people to their food. You see it through their 3 programs so beautifully. You see it as they're educating young people, bringing them to the farm. You see it as they're educating the next generation of farmers. And you see it as they're thinking about what the landscape looks like going forward and what their land access work. When you take all of that together, you see that Pie Ranch is really pushing for systemic change in our food system.
It's a unique place because in addition to having a really wide variety of crops, they also have all these other elements like animals and direct marketing and farm stand and CSA, and they do events, and there's pie.
Pie Ranch provides an educational experience to kids that they would not get in any other way. They get to plant, they get to harvest, they get to eat, they get an understanding of how the earth actually works.
It's just so fun out here. You get to enjoy nature, do a little bit of work, and eat.
You can just go like this and hold it to the side, put the potato in.
We just got started, and I have a feeling I'm going to be sweating a lot more than I am now by the time we get halfway.
They encourage you to become like, not like a big change in the world, but at least in your own life.
Even though we come from a different background, different places, we come here and we get together as a group, as a family.
The stuff I learned in these 2 days, I would probably never learn my whole life if I didn't come here.
At Pie Ranch, we are training new farmers so that they can go out there with the skills and concepts and passion needed to transform the food system.
And so their role in terms of training the next generation of farmers to be good stewards of the land, to grow organic food, to be able to make a living is, I think, incredibly important.
I've been here for 8 months almost now, and you think, okay, my knowledge is going to plateau. Nope, I just keep learning and learning and learning.
It still would dry down, and that wouldn't affect, it shouldn't affect the quality of the wheat.
I am successfully running my own farm with 2 partners, and Pie Ranch was critical to where I am at now.
It's not just, learning how to plant a seed in the ground and care for it, but it's also about how you care for your community and build a better one together.
Stanford grad.
We see this next generation of farmers coming in. And these are people who have a new approach to farming that's very integrated. And they're popping up all over the place. And it's the growing momentum, a critical mass, And I want to make sure that they stay here.
So land access, particularly for new farmers, is going to be a really important policy initiative that we need to work on. We don't know all the details, we don't know exactly what we need to do or the mechanisms and how that is going to happen, but it's something that's really important, and I know Jered at Pie Ranch is at the forefront of trying to get this done.
Just like we need protected park space for our psychological well-being and be able to play and recreate, we need to preserve that productive farmland so that we know that we have that resource to provide our communities with the food that it needs.
We want good food, we're asking for good food, and the only way that we're going to be able to have it is if this land in the San Mateo corridor is preserved. It's our responsibility as food educators, as farmers, to make it happen, and we have to make it happen.
Every month at Pie Ranch we host a community workday and a potluck and a barn dance. It just taps into that desire for people to celebrate.
The history of the Steele brothers is very significant, not just for San Mateo County, but for California. There are still buildings that are reminiscent to the family, and because of that, there's a priority in that they would be preserved.
The last Steele family member to live in this house was Catherine Steele, and her husband, Will Steele, was born in this house and he died in the house. And his dying wish was that the house and the surrounding buildings and the land around it be preserved for the public to come and breathe the air of the Pioneer West. Fast forward to now, Pie Ranch, we have that chance to restore this as a real working farm.
This is an incredible gem of a piece of land. It's got these old, beautiful, historic buildings that are in need of repair, and we feel like we can not only help keep them alive, but repurpose them to serve this bigger vision around food system change. In our short amount of time, we've been able to serve a number of people here at Pie Ranch, but we feel like with just a bit more investment into the infrastructure, we can serve a lot more.
The role that they have in both teaching and demonstrating, at the same time providing a good product, is really the model for the future.
Pie Ranch is such a shining example of integrating all kinds of concerns in
the farming enterprise. And it's just so satisfying, so deeply satisfying for me to see that happening.
The more we can invest in places like Pine Ranch, the more we're all going to benefit in terms of a food supply that is healthy, sustainable, and going to be there for a long time.
I look forward to the day when most of the food that we consume comes from places that we know. And if we can help in whatever little way to make that come about, that's our goal. All right. So that helped, hopefully, to make it come to life a little bit more. Oops.
Like the ecosystem, for everyone to play their unique part.
There we go. So we feel really good about having a place that, for the last 10 years, has been viable. Like, we have a growing team. We have 30 staff now that help with all the different programs that we've been running. But we also felt unsatisfied that somehow the number of youth that are coming and apprentices that are heading out into the world, like, we aren't really moving the needle on that sort of transformative change that we allude to, wanting to. It's our mission, cultivate a more healthy and just food system from seed to table. So how we could keep at this for the next, 40 years, and I don't think we'd transform the food system. So we got invited to participate in this innovation lab at Google on, it's called the Google Food Lab now. It was the Innovation Lab for Food Experience when we started 3 years ago. And the food team at Google, for their company, large organization meal program, wanted to leverage that program to help accomplish positive change in the world. And I thought, wow, if Google wants to do that, maybe we can start to move the needle on food system change if the sort of values and principles that we're embedding in our model can somehow transfer to their model. We were invited to share ideas that they might help take up and invest in and be a part of manifesting. And so I threw out this idea of CSA 2.0 to take that experience I had as a 19-year-old up in Covelo on this farm, one farm, small farm with maybe 100 households that commit to that farm. Can we take those values, that transparent economics of the production system all the way through to consumption, and make that part of this large organization cafeteria? Could they act like a household would in a CSA relationship and make that kind of commitment up front to not only our farm, but say an aggregation of other farms? And so that's, in so doing, we also thought we could scale our production to meet that increased demand. So we only have about a 60-member CSA and run and sell produce at the farm stand off of the 27 acres that we were farming. So that first 14 acres, we acquired the lower slice through a campaign, and then, but of that 27 acres, we're not really producing enough to make a dent at all in the meal program at Google or Stanford. So we had this opportunity to take over a lease of a farm across the street and, basically, by a factor of 10, increase our production in 1 year. But we could only do that with the help of the team of employees that the Garibaldi family, who had, because of the consequences of NAFTA, okay, right, because we want to get to Q&A. The consequences of NAFTA, which we can go into if we have time in the Q&A, kind of led their production model to not be competitive anymore with those of South American floral production. and without going into deeper reasons of why, I'd love to show you just again, and I'll cut my other slide just a little shorter so that you can hear some of the voices beyond mine of the Google and other folks who are involved in helping to get this scaled version of what we're trying to do happening across the street. So we'll do one more film, and then maybe we'll open it up to Q&A. There's this beautiful tradition of family farming on the coast that's quietly and rapidly disappearing. And we don't want to see that happen. There's all this knowledge of the soils, the water, climate, what it takes to produce crops. We don't want to see that disappear.
The Garibaldi family came over from Italy in 1892. I'm the fourth generation, my son and daughter the fifth. Our family came to Pescadero to grow in this nice ranch 44 years ago.
The farm market was good in the early days, and we did it for 40-something years, and we're successful at it.
At one time, there were 48 vendors that grew their own stuff. Then it started changing. South America got involved.
Everything we grew, they grew, and they grew it better and cheaper. In the last 10 years, when the business kind of started going south, and then the decision was made a year ago to call it quits, and it was pretty heart-wrenching.
68 years going to the market, and you just cold turkey quit. One final generation have been doing this. That was hard to take.
Over the last 10 years, we at Pie Ranch have developed a diverse operation and educational farm. We have been looking for a partner to scale what we've learned to a sustainable working farm. The Año Nuevo site offers a perfect venue to do this.
Out of nowhere, this nice gentleman living across the street from us came in to visit us. We started talking, and immediately we hit it off. We said, this is going to work.
We're not just looking at creating a sustainable farm, but we're really wanting to have, from production all the way through to consumption, be sustainable. We needed the upfront operating capital and customer base to make this idea a reality.
One of the unique aspects of Google being located in Mountain View is we're so close to so many great farms. What we're trying to do over here is to provide Googlers with delicious, nutritious, local food, but actually make the connection with food as well. So as a large organization, we have committed that we're going to buy this year and over the years to come a large part of his farm production up front. So we're providing with the cash flow, so actually he doesn't have to worry about will he be able to pay the bills as he's waiting for his crops to grow.
This project is giving us the opportunity to develop an innovative CSA. In a traditional CSA, you have a group of customers in the community who support a farm financially throughout the season and in return get a share of the harvest. Google is committing in advance like a CSA member would. This not only allows us to take the best care of the land, but also the people who are working the land.
I get to keep my crew, and that meant a lot. I told Jered, I'm on board only if you keep these guys, because if not, I don't want to stay, you know. Without them, we're nothing.
They know the soil, they know the systems. If it weren't for them, we would not be able to hit the ground running and growing the diversity of crops that we wanted.
It helps that local community, Pescadero, to remain viable. It helps us to connect actually Googlers with the original food, a farmer.
We're going to be able to integrate what's being eaten in the cafe during the day, coming from the farm, with what can be taken home by an employee over the weekend.
The Schmidt Family Foundation's mission is to support programs that are environmentally and economically viable and support local communities. Which is why we're working closely with the two partners, Pie Ranch and Google, to prototype a new financing model that enables smaller farms to sell their produce upfront and directly to large organizations and stabilize their cash flows.
So the Schmidt Family Foundation played a critical role by providing us financing. And that helps us take care of some of the immediate needs of getting started, like buying equipment. But beyond that, this allows us to develop a whole new supply chain option for farmers. We're excited. We've got our first planting of wheat and barley and vegetable crops like the peas and fava beans and chard and kale. So we're rolling.
Now the ranch, I look, it's like, okay, we've got wheat growing out there, and it's like, okay, that's a first. I've never seen it. We're gonna eventually have animals and pasture. It's like, wow, you know. But I'm excited about it. It's a change in the right direction.
We're going to continue on as far as we can go.
We're just super excited about the potential of having this model move us from an anonymous food system to one where relationships help to drive sustainability.
So success for me would be if large organizations over here in the Bay Area, in the US, or around the world would actually learn from this model and apply and probably do it even better than we can imagine as of today.
Hey. So I'll kind of end there. We'll go into the rest of the slides and just say that we're incredibly grateful for the opportunity to trial this. We're in our third season with Google and our second season now with Stanford Dining. So there's a similar large commitment from you all, and if those of you who eat in the facilities, portion of your food dollars is going to this project, which is awesome. And then we just are formalizing 3 new contracts with Palantir in Palo Alto here, Airbnb in San Francisco, and Thumbtack in San Francisco as well. With the ultimate goal of trying to make this kind of large organization model relevant to our original and closer to our heart. Not to say that employees of these companies aren't becoming closer to our heart, but are the people who we've been working with in the schools over the last 10 years are the teachers, faculty, and the students who we've built relationships with. We'd like to see this model become viable for their large organization cafeterias. So school food, a lot more challenging. And if we had another class time, we could get into unpacking that one. But we're excited, and this is our way that we want to see this social enterprise scale. And we are building that with other farms now, too. There's going to be 3 coastal farms and 3 valley farms from the Cape Valley Farm Shop. And we're the part in the film where I talk about the employees will be able to take home a meal kit over the weekend, or say they can take the same food home and prepare it over the weekend. We got a grant recently from the USDA to start prototyping what that would look like. And so just for short, it's kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Blue Aprons or other kind of meal kit services. It's like that, but with the social and ecological values of the CSA model embedded in that meal kit. So let's open it up for questions. We have, I think, another 15 minutes. Skylar.
As you scale, do you plan to keep farm sizes small? And if you do, how do you plan to compete with the prices of larger commercial farms?
Right, excellent question.
Can you please just repeat the questions?
So as we scale, are we planning to scale our production to compete with other large-scale farms, or is there some implicit viability with small, medium-scale farms in this model? We definitely, as we've gone from a small to a larger small farm, we want to stay in the small to medium scale range, and then aggregate multiple farms into being able to provide the consistency and quality required for these large organization cafeterias and the orders, and have the efficiencies help be competitive on price point, but also combining the wholesale pricing with the retail pricing of a meal kit, adding that value that's owned by the production, by the farm community, that's where we feel like that enterprise will be able to be viable. So combining that retail and wholesale price points will make it viable to compete with just an industrial scale monocrop farm. So we're definitely not there yet, and that's one of the areas that we've been struggling with is to not just be a small fraction of the food orders for any cafeteria. We have to be, it has to be affordable for that food business to be able to work with us. So that's where we're trying to find that sweet spot, and we're hopeful we'll get there.
So being at Silicon Valley, we try to approach a lot of the world's problems with how technology can make this issue better.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously hunger is one of the world's leading problems.
Right.
And we are lucky here that we have the option to decide between organic, inorganic food, what type of food. But in a lot of places in the world, they just need food.
Right.
And when we think of that, kind of genetically modified nutrition seem like a feasible solution to approach the hunger problem. What are your thoughts about that?
That's another great question that's would take another whole class to unpack, but I'll do my best at trying to offer a quick response. I feel like the genetic technologies that are owned by a very small select group of companies doesn't create food sovereignty, which actually would allow for longer term, more most of the world's farmers are small-scale farmers and subsistence farmers. So to enable them to adopt this technology would create a dependence on a distant source of seed that they can't save themselves and use from year to year. So it creates a false sense of security just by the notion that they might increase yields, when rather this kind of biologically based diversified system that has seeds that can be sown year after year, owned by the community, is by far a much more, I think, long-term viable option for solving the hunger problem. And most of the hunger in the world is not caused by the lack of productive land. It's caused by the lack of control of that land and the lack of control of the means and modes of production. Anyone else? So sorry, I forgot to repeat the last one. Hopefully it came through in the response. If I understand your question is, do we want to scale?
I know that you want to scale, but are there
limits to the scaling? The quality, and it's a really great question too. The question is, can we, do we want, what are the limits to scaling our production model? And we don't know that yet, though we do know that the greater number of people who are engaged in their own startup, you have a lot more incentive, like to do it well. And so our vision is to have a lot more social entrepreneurs in the ag world have what to them is a meaningful life, that they can have a good, earn a good living off of a certain amount of land that is appropriately scaled. And that's what we're trying to figure out what that is. And we don't know if it's 150 acres, 250 acres of this sort of integrated cropping and livestock system that we're working on with these kinds of committed markets. But if we can come up with a replicable template, that's what we're striving for, at least in our area. It's obviously going to be different in different parts of the state and different parts of the U.S. and different parts of the world. But our goal is to create a robust and healthy local food system. That's what we're trying to figure. What is that right? Is there a sweet spot for the size of an operation?
When you decided that you wanted to have your own farm, how did you go about getting the resources and building a team and figuring out what exactly the farm would look like?
So the question was, how do we get going with the resources to get the farm started and the team and whatnot? We started really small. It was just my wife and I and our friend Karen. She had the financial resources through inheritance of property in Carmel and was able to transfer that equity into acquiring the 14 acres that we started on. And we arranged for a payback to her. It was a personal loan, a combination of sweat equity and then cash loan. And I can go into details of that if you're interested. And then we kept the day job. Nancy still worked at the university full-time, and I was full-time getting the farm and nonprofit going. And then like most, in fact, I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow in the SEERS fellowship class on leadership, at like how in the beginnings you wear multiple hats, and we're doing everything from the admin of running a nonprofit organization, getting our 501c3 status, reaching out to school partners, providing that experience on the farm, getting the equipment, sowing the crops, like everything I was doing with help from Nancy when she could, with help from Karen when she could. And then we started to grow by growing our team of apprentices who are in a way being like, I imagine you all, if you do internships, sometimes you can get paid internships and sometimes you can, and ours were paid but not well. It's just a stipend. But they're learning a lot and we're teaching them a lot, but they are contributing a lot to the viability of the farm early on. And then we've grew our programming. Part of our strategy to be viable early was to leverage our experience of developing meaningful programming and educational experiences, because that has value to funders and to school communities that can afford it. So we had a fee-for-service structure that brought in more income. There's a lot more viable than selling, a bunch of carrots. So we wanted that bunch of carrots to have relevance and have part of our earned income stream, but we knew that wasn't going to cover our desire for a fair salary for us to do this work full time. So a combination of pulling different resources together, and then as soon as we started putting the word out for when we had more income and we had enough to be able to hire other team members, we've just over the last 10 years have grown from just that core of 3, really 1.5 FTE full-time, equivalent to now like close to 35 people who work with us to make it happen. So there's a lot of letting go now of those responsibilities and getting to focus on fun projects like this. That's great. I did go up to one of the food innovation labs was held in Seattle. So I don't know if that's how far north you're thinking of. It's still West Coast. There's a lot more moisture, but there's an incredible ag community around Seattle and other metropolitan areas throughout the U.S. Tremendous amount of agricultural land still. And I mean, the U.S. we're quite fortunate. Even though it's hard to grow in the winter, it's still possible, especially with some of the kind of other appropriate technologies that can enhance, that are coming out of the valley or coming out of other ag schools to make it possible to do indoor growing with some fresh vegetables. But I do feel like a lot of the ag in areas that have more seasonality used to be able to do it. And it's only because we've gotten used to being able to ship produce all over the world, burning up a lot of fossil fuels, creating a lot of carbon in the atmosphere that is causing other problems that we're having now to contend with. That if we created a more carbon-friendly local food system, we'd figure out ways to have that diversity again in places where you have shorter growing season. We have friends in Alaska who are doing this on a small scale. They obviously don't have big, maybe they could tie in with the university in Fairbanks or something, but I think there's that problem, I think, is solvable. And it's just a matter of taking away some of those entrenched supports that happen through our farm bill every 5 years that further pushes farms into growing commodity crops with false crop insurance. I mean, it's a crazy system that's gotten set up to why we have what we have. It's not just free market forces, if that's, you know, the rationale for being able to like continue with the kind of global food system that we have. It's definitely been manipulated and supported with particular financial interests from the folks involved in crafting up those policies. Okay, time for one more question.
What are the biggest challenges?
I think, so his question is, what are the biggest challenges going forward? I think one of, in a way, maybe it's too easy off the back of the last question to answer it in this way, but I feel like the unfair system that we currently have that's propped up by policies that are created to foster a particular kind of system, that our challenge is to undo that and level the playing field and make for ideas like this to find the kind of support that it needs to grow and succeed, and that we don't have to struggle as much as we do in order to make these projects. So we feel very fortunate to have partners like Google and Stanford to overcome those barriers. But for this to really take off and to enter into other areas of other communities, we need to figure out new policies. So one of the ways we're working on that is through the San Mateo Food Systems Alliance. We put forward this idea of a local food and farm bill. So instead of relying on the slow change of entrenched policy at the federal level, why don't we develop our own version of it that reflected our values and our interests locally. So all those groups of stakeholders that go to these monthly meetings, we're in the process right now of crafting that. And one of the SEERS, one of the students in this fellowship, the social entrepreneurs class with Kathleen Janis, is helping us work on that, looking at good policies from the federal level all the way down to the local level that could be recrafted into a comprehensive version of the Farm Bill, so to help overcome some of those barriers. But it's not just policy alone. It's got to, this training program, access to land, access to capital, but policy can help a lot. Look at that. It is 6:30 on the nose. I really enjoy getting to share our story a little bit, and I know there's an opportunity for continued conversations. And you're all very much invited to come out to visit anytime. We're open 7 days a week. So if you ever find yourself in our neighborhood, please come by and visit. And then if you care to frolic in a 1930s packing shed barn and on every third Saturday of the month, please come out and join us.
Jered,